Welcome to the Eastern Caribbean Center's Research Pipeline and Training Series, Introduction to Qualitative Methodologies. This is the second course in this pipeline training series. Our session today will be taught by two experienced researchers from UVI in population statistics, special education, and health psychology. Dr. Marissa Johnson-Rogers, a research psychologist and the assistant director at the Eastern Caribbean Center, and Dr. Deshona Liburd Audain, a health psychologist and a research analyst at the Eastern Caribbean Center.
Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our second session, pipeline series. We are doing a session on qualitative methodologies. Your host today will be Dr. Johnson-Rogers and myself, Dr. Liburd Audain. Dr. Rogers had experience and expertise in research psychology as well as population statistics and special education research. My experience and expertise are in biology and health psychology. We are the Eastern Caribbean Center, and we have over 40 years of experience in data collection, research methodology, and report development. As you can see, we strive to provide strength-focused, culturally responsive research and reporting. Remember to register for our next session next month. Here are our team members. We've got our director, Dr. LaWanda Cummins. She's on the call. Assistant Director, Dr. Johnson-Rogers, who's also on the call. Our statistician, Ms. Aishi Balu, she's here. Myself, our other research analyst, Tribisia Queely, and our student researcher, Sheldon Henry. For the doctoral students who are on the call, this is your pre-work. Have you done it? Pop it in the chat if anything. Okay. And we will recap our last session that was in September. From research question to methodology. Dr. Cummins and Ms. Balu went over social problem to research problem, how you decide on a method, and what is alignment. So, a social problem is a real world situation that is less than ideal and could be improved. How can more be discovered about the nature of a social problem? And what you know is not the same as what we, the scholarly body. To recap, here are some common research terms that's used in qualitative or quantitative studies. So if you want, you can take like a screenshot or picture, write them down. And these words to researchers distinguish which type of study is being done. Here are your learning objectives. To understand the components of the methodology chapter for your qualitative research. To apply considerations for choosing a qualitative approach. To evaluate your readiness to design and implement a qualitative research study for your dissertation research, and to distinguish your research design, your research question or questions, and your research methods for your dissertation topic. In our research pipeline series, we have a focus on growth mindset. And here are some non-cognitive factors for growth mindset. Learning theory continues to stress the importance of student development focused on the non-cognitive skills in the 21st century STEM industry. So you have your motivation, effort and self-regulation, learning, self-efficacy, your academic self-concept, antisocial and prosocial behavior, and your coping and resilience. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Johnson-Rogers, and she will lead you into the bulk of our work today in qualitative research.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start off by dispelling some of the myths of qualitative research. And a few of those limits we have highlighted here are that it's easier than quantitative research, it's not credible, it's not rigorous, and it takes longer. Hold on. So the characteristics of qualitative research is that the focus is on context and meaning. The data is non-numerical. The researcher is the primary instrument for data collection and analysis. The focus is on context and meaning through rich description. The focus is on the quality of experience, trying to describe or understand the essence of or nature of the human experience. The research has more open-ended goals, and it seeks to understand, describe, or discover meaning. And, as you know, in quantitative research, our data collection analysis tools are varied. We have SPSS, we have a myriad of analytical tools and data collection. But in quantitative research, the primary data collector, data analysis tool is the researcher. The qualitative approach, we're going to break these down as we go through this series, this session. The characteristics of qualitative research, the role of the researcher, choosing a methodology, the framework, data collection analysis, and that involves participant selection and sampling. We use when an area is under research. That's one of the reasons why we use qualitative approach. It's also used when when the depth of understanding, for example, the mean or experience, or when theory generation is important. Data analysis can be very complex and requires analysis of a large quantity of text data. Software packages can manage data but are not used to do data analysis. The characteristics of qualitative research are natural setting, the researcher as the key instrument, multiple sources of data, inductive and deductive data analysis, participants meaning, emergent design, reflexivity, and holistic account. In the natural setting, the researcher has face-to-face interaction with the participant. With the researcher being the key instrument, the qualitative researcher are the primary data collection instrument through their interview guide, field notes, and observation. The qualitative researchers do not rely on questionnaire instrument developed by other researchers. The multiple sources of data, the data are gathered from interviews, observations, documents, and audiovisual. Each of these are open-ended forms of data. Participants can share their recollections freely without being limited to predetermined scales or measurements. Categories from which to choose from a response. Qualitative researchers have multiple sources rather than relying on a single source of data. Inductive analysis. Data are analyzed by building patterns, categories, and themes from the bottom up, or EMIC. Data segments are coded using participants' words. Deductive analysis, ethic, or top-down, involves reading the data from looking for something specific. Participants' meanings. The researchers keep a focus on learning the meaning that the participants hold about the problem or issue, not the meaning the researchers bring or that writers express in the literature. Emergent design. The initial plan for research cannot be tightly prescribed. Some or all phases of the process may change or shift after fieldwork or data collection begins. Reflexivity. Inquirers reflect about their role in the study and their personal background, culture, and experiences hold potential for shaping their interpretations, such as the themes they advance and the meaning they ascribe to the data. Holistic account. The researchers try to develop a complex picture of the problem or issue on the study, which involves reporting multiple perspectives, identifying the factors involved in a situation, and generally sketching a larger picture of that emerges. So choosing a methodology. In qualitative research, you're gonna come across Presswell quite often. And he listed 5 common methodologies on the qualitative methodology. And we have here case study, ethnography, grounded theory, narrative theory, and phenomenology. There's also Patton, who dives deeper into sub-branches of the 5 common approaches. And he also lists 19 methodologies that are commonly used in qualitative methodologies. So natural inquiry, ethnography is rooted in anthropology, which is what is the culture of a group of people, and how does that culture explain its perspectives and behavior. There's also generic qualitative philosophy and program evaluation. What are the practical consequences and useful applications of what we can learn about this issue or problem? Grounded theory, social sciences methodology, and what theory grounded in fieldwork emerges from a systematic comparative analysis so as to explain what has been observed. Narrative inquiry, social sciences, literary criticism, literary nonfiction. How can this narrative story be interpreted to understand and illuminate the life and culture that created it? What does this narrative or story reveal about that person or world from which it came? Phenomenology is within philosophies. What is the meaning, structure, and essence of the lived experience of this phenomenon for this person or group of people? Now, the role of the researcher. As a researcher, you have to define and explain your role as an observer and participant. Define and explain your role as a data collection instrument. Explain how you will manage power differential and coercion. Explain how you manage your researchers' biases. Other ethical issues as applicable, example, doing study within your own work environment, and the plan to address these issues. You have to reveal any personal or professional relationships you may have with participants, with emphasis on supervisory or instructor relationships involving power over the participants. You have to state how any research biases and/or power relationships are or will be managed. Other ethical issues as applicable, example, as I said, studying your own work environment, and how you plan to address those issues to avoid any bias or any conflict. So we have here the most common approaches by their popularity. As we discussed before, we now move on to explaining each of these individually. Ethnography, as we said, is rooted in anthropology. Like many forms of qualitative research, it places emphasis on in-person field study and includes immersion through participant observation in a setting to decipher cultural meaning and generate rich descriptive data that emerge in relation to the development of rapport and empathy with respondents, the use of multiple data sources, the making of field notes.
And Dr. Johnson Rogers, here on this slide, we have a research question example from a past dissertation.
Okay. And it
So
says
next
what?
slide.
Okay, the research question was, what function do microprocesses play in facilitating or inhibiting the implementation of structural competencies as it affects Afro-Americans impacted by the criminal justice or related systems? And this was taken from dissertation by Corzetta Butts Lamore in 2022. Phenomenology is rooted in philosophy. The core questions are, what is the meaning, structure, and essence of the lived experience of this phenomenon for this person or group of people? Example, what are the lived experiences of adult residents in Washington County, Maine, who forego the COVID-19 vaccination? And this was a study done by Summer W. Davis in 2023. And this type of approach is considered both a research method as well as philosophy, and is largely attributed to the philosophy of Edmund Purcell. Researchers employ phenomenological research methods tend to be interested in individuals' lived experiences of a phenomenon. Grounded theory, its roots is social science methodology. Core questions include what theory grounded in fieldwork emerges from systematic comparative analysis so as to explain what has been observed. Example, how do counselor educators provide competent cross-cultural mentoring? And this approach is qualitative research that attempts to develop a theory that comes from data or the field. Data for grounded theory studies can come from a variety of sources such as interviews, observations, documents, and other sources. It was developed in California by Glaser and Strong during their study, Awareness of Dying. It is a general methodology for developing theory that is grounded in data, which is systematically gathered and analyzed. Narrative. You're saying something, Deshona?
No, next slide, sorry. Just slow to that.
Narrative inquiry is rooted in social sciences, literary criticism, and literary nonfiction. The core question, how can this narrative or story be interpreted to understand and illuminate the life and culture that it created? What does this narrative or story reveal about the person and world from which it came? For example, what do these narratives of the post-secondary transition journey reveal about the current quality of life and sense of well-being of persons with IDD in relation to community integration? And this was from a dissertation by Eric R. Scarlett that was done in 2022. So narrative research can refer to a phenomenon on the study or specific methods used to investigate the phenomenon. Narrative researchers describe individual storied lives and write about the experiences. Narrative research methodologically gives primacy to the lived experience of individuals as expressed in their stories. Case study methods tend to employ a variety of data sources, including direct observation, interviews, documents, artifacts, and other sources. Case study research methods involve studying a case or multiple cases of contemporary real-life events. Generic qualitative research is rooted in philosophy and program evaluation. The core questions are: what are practical consequences and useful applications of what we can learn about this issue or problem? For example, what are prosecutors' perceptions of wrongful convictions of African American men?
Yes.
So we'll now move on to Dr. Audain on choosing a framework.
Okay, so in choosing a framework, choosing a framework, okay, so the basis for designing, understanding, and analyzing ways to investigate your research problem comes from choosing a framework. Your research problem, the research purpose, and your research questions, along with the background of your study, should all be aligned to this framework. And as you describe your framework, it demonstrates an understanding of theories and concepts relevant to your research topic. A conceptual framework is a generative source of thinking, planning, conscious action, and reflection throughout the research process. It is a dynamic meeting place of theory and method. This concept is an abstract idea that's generalized from specific instances. The concept of evaluation refers to a process rather than specific steps the evaluation will take. Your problem must be properly framed related to the conceptual framework. These are questions you can utilize to situate your study with a conceptual framework. What concepts are you using? How are they defined? How have these concepts been used in the studies on which you are building? Who has written about these concepts in the past? Which authors are writing about these concepts now? Are there theories, that will apply? On the theoretical side, a theory is an explanation of how empirical phenomena interact. The problem must be framed properly in a theoretical framework. Here are questions to help you situate your study in a theoretical framework. Who are the theorists discussing the current problem? What historical theories situate this study? Are there current theories that will apply? Choose one and sometimes more to put the study in perspective, both historically and in the present. And what variables are you interested in the theories? Ethics in research. This is one of my favorite areas because I strongly believe in protecting persons, people, animals, the planet in research. So ethics in research is guided by three founding principles for protecting human research participants. They are beneficence, justice, and respect for persons. Often qualitative research, like Dr. Johnson Rogers said, we embrace sensitive topics and have the ability to clarify phenomena in which operationalized variables have not yet been identified and give new understanding to familiar problems. Ethics is necessary to be observed and genuinely applied during research. Therefore, protecting the rights of human research participants is vital. Ethics is necessary to be observed and genuinely applied during the research process. As I said, the Institutional Review Board, which those of you who have done social science research, you've had to go through the Institutional Review Board for approval. The IRB committee, they are the caretakers and overseers of the three ethics principles. They scrupulously dissect researcher study proposals to determine whether the researcher has made sufficient provisions in their study to protect the human research participants. Otherwise, IRB would not approve the study and request ethical considerations be provided and ethical research criteria met. That is the only time you'll get their approval, after all the ethical criteria in research are met. And lastly, informed consent. These are some of the most important aspects that your research participants need to understand. Their participation is voluntary, and usually in your informed consent form, it describes in detail the purpose of the study as well as the role of the researcher, so what you, the researcher, will be doing. The informed consent form also lets each participant know their rights to refuse or withdraw from the study at any time. The form also includes how anonymity will be maintained and let them know that their responses are confidential, and they have the opportunity to review their transcribed interview at the end. Moving into qualitative data collection, we can only collect data after we've gotten IRB approval. So these are the most common qualitative data collection methods. We have individual interviews that can be one-on-one in person. Because of COVID, a lot of it became virtual, but it can be over the phone, in person, in face-to-face, and virtually. It can be correspondence, through email, focus group discussions where it's a collection of people, and observations and documents. Observations such as body language and facial cues, non-verbal responses, those sorts of things also help with data collection. And your documents, as we have here, your field notes during your interview and your journaling after you've completed an interview. So you align your data collection methods to your research questions, and you carefully consider how to develop your own data collection instruments. Moving into participant selection. In qualitative research, we usually use, well, the most prominently used, I should say, is purposeful sampling, where the researcher sets the criteria for participants based on their characteristics to inform the research questions. You should identify and justify your sampling strategy by stating the criteria for participant selection, Establish how your participants are known to meet the criteria. State the number of participants or cases and the rationale for that number. And you explain your specific procedures for how participants will be identified, contacted, and recruited. Then you describe your relationship between data saturation and your sample size. Continuing on with, okay. Moving into qualitative data analysis. For each type of qualitative data that you collect, you have to identify your connection to data for a specific research question, the type of and your procedure used for coding your data, any software used for data analysis, and your manner of treatment for discrepant cases. Each specific qualitative approach has distinct terms for their analysis procedures. So researchers will need to cite the specific authors they have used for their research approach. And just a little bit on qualitative data management software. It helps to manage your data, but it does not analyze the data for you. You can use qualitative data management software, but it's not really required for dissertation. Check with your committee members about its use. And the most common examples of qualitative data management software are NVivo, Atlas, and MaxQDA, but I know that there is now Deduce and Otter AI coming into play. Okay, we can move on to the next one. Yes, we did, right? Okay. So common methods in data analysis and qualitative data analysis, you have content analysis. There are 6 of them, sorry. You've got content analysis, discourse analysis, grounded theory, narrative analysis, thematic approach, and phenomenological analysis. Yeah. So content analysis analyzes text such as interview transcripts, diaries, or documents, rather than observation-based field notes for data reduction and sense-making efforts that take a volume of qualitative material and attempts to find core consistencies and meanings. In discourse analysis, this one focuses on the ways meaning is created through language. Grounded theory employs inductive processes. Inductive, we know that's from the bottom of the book, it's emic. It employs inductive processes that stay close to the data through a constant comparison method. Narrative analysis focuses specifically on the content or the structure of the stories as narratives. With phenomenological analysis, the analysis remains as close to the data as possible, same as grounded theory. And in a thematic analysis, this one is used with multiple methodological approaches, and it helps to develop themes to answer research questions. So in qualitative research, as Dr. Johnson-Rogers said, the myths are that it's not credible, it takes longer, and some other stuff, it's easier. This one here, trustworthiness, is the qualitative equivalent of reliability and validity in quantitative research. So qualitative research characteristics are the commitment to rigor, impact and importance, sensitivity to context, and transparency and coherence. And these characteristics mentioned help guide validity and quality in qualitative research. Trustworthiness strengthens the value of a research study, and validity in qualitative research means specific procedures are used by the research to check for accuracy. I can find it. So credibility is used by positivist researchers to ensure that their study tests or measures what is intended to measure. In qualitative research, credibility presents itself as the integrity of the data. Transferability has the objective to maintain the richness that is specific to the context being researched. Dependability is the equivalent of reliability in quantitative research. The methods and apparatus used to collect data should produce consistent results with each repetition. And conformability aims to explore or acknowledge the ways our biases and prejudices map onto our interpretations of data to mediate those to the fullest extent possible, structured in the reflexivity process. Here are a few tips on addressing trustworthiness. Each of these map onto one of those 4 areas of trustworthiness. So our credibility areas here are data saturation with member checks, prolonged contact, triangulation. These are the common methods on credibility, well, that helps with credibility. Transferability, there is a variation in participant selection and thick description. Dependability comes from the audit trails and triangulations. And conformability uses audit trails, reflexivity, and triangulation to confirm. Okay, so once again, this is the 2nd course in our research pipeline series. Feel free to scan and register for our upcoming course in November. Thank you. And are there any questions? Please take the evaluation if you can. I will stop sharing. So we're open to questions.
Oh, thank you.
That was a great presentation. Thank you very much for exposing me to the to qualitative research. And I just had a question in regards to when I think there was one of the later slides where you talked about the validity and reliability of the data, but then there was the last one that talked about looking at being able to being objective. How confirmability, thank you, that was the word I was looking for. Can you speak a little bit about that and how what type of strategy would you use for that to measure that or to check that?
Well, you know, qualitative research, since the researcher is the primary instrument, it is subjective, and confirmability is the balance for that. So even though I'm researching something that I am completely into, and I might have my preconceived notions or my biases and what I am expecting to happen, I do have to back off from that and look at it objectively and not have any of my thoughts and the way that I want this to go seep into the process, the analysis process. Yeah, Dr. Johnson-Rogers?
Yeah, so that's why So that's why certain checks are employed with confirmability, as Deshona had mentioned, the audit trail and the reflexivity to and the triangulation to ensure that you are cognizant of that there are biases, but here are the audit trails to show that I did the work to ensure that there's none of my feelings went into the data I collected, how I collected the data. Because in certain types of qualitative data collection, you have to do observations. You talk about the surrounding. You talk about the person that you take side notes. That might not make your final dissertation, but you have to take notes. You have to have a notebook. You have to take notes that are not part of the actual transcript. And we also have to employ, as Deshona said, the member checking, which basically involves where I have to send the transcript back to the person I interviewed for them to back check and say, hey, yeah, this is what I said.
Okay.
So whatever I publish has to be truthful. So there are lots of checks and balances involved under the umbrella of trustworthiness for us to achieve the reliability and validity that is comparable to quantitative methodologies.
Wonderful. I think we have enough time for an activity.
Ooh.
So I'm just looking for, right here. For any of our doctoral students who may be here, now is your time to tell us about any of these 5 things or ask.
Good day, everyone. Good day. Thank you very much for the added information on qualitative research. I am one of the students who is working on dissertation at the moment, and this is my first training with you, by the way. Dr. Maxwell informed me about it yesterday, actually, when I was in the writing session. So I've decided to do phenomenology, and I'm still thinking I wanted to look at education. And coming to the session today on the part experience with it makes me question some parts of what I've written so far, which is good. Which is fine because I haven't completed everything as yet. I'm still in the proposal stage. So I want to ask this question. If the participants are only, I would say, minimally phenomenon, is it appropriate to study it? Or my participants have to have long-term experience?
It does, no, because if you are looking at, you are looking at an experience of something, right?
Yes.
What has happened, how this happened, what was the lived experience, the essence of this thing, since it's phenomenology. What was it like for these people? What was their lived experience?
Yes, I want to look at education, the arts in STEM education. But for some participants or participants, I'm realizing might not have as much experience with the arts in STEM.
Okay, well, I mean, it's not quantitative session, but you can do like 3 or 4 if that were quantitative. But what you can do with research, you're able to define your parameters. So maybe you want participants who have been doing this for the last 3 years, last 2 years. Maybe somebody who started yesterday might not be as applicable as you want. And that's that's a part of your methodology and your sample and selection. That's where you go, you define it there in that area.
Okay.
So did you do any of this pre-work? Future Dr. Baker, did you do any?
I think a signal is
Yeah, I think it's bad. Yeah.
Identify your research methodology. And
Yeah, you did, because you chose phenomenology.
yes, as I said, actually, I think this more information from Dr. Maxwell yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did some of that. Let me see. I'm looking at educational leadership as well as how the leaders incorporate at the theoretical framework of transformational leadership. Let me see. Okay. Okay, and for number 5, the work that I'm about to do will showcase exemplary practices that educators can use to encourage students to enter STEM fields, and how they can be creative in of reaching out to students who might not otherwise have been encouraged to enter those fields because science and math seem to be such an isolated area.
Okay, I have a question. Do you have you were breaking up a little bit, so I don't know if you told us who your target population will be. Is it
STEM teachers, principals, STEM teachers, education officers. I want to interview a public and a private school principal, at least 2 teachers from each, and the education officer with responsibility for STEM education.
Okay. I only ask because there sometimes we do research things that are already in we already know of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I asked you about what's your population.
Right. That's the sample I'm looking at.
Okay, is your population like worldwide, Caribbean region, America, not South America?
And some very recent. So I'm doing some groundwork at the moment.
That's good. I'm so excited for you. That's good. You're your proposal stage, you said?
Yes, I've done the first in yeah.
Okay, cool.
I wanted to know if the slides would be available for us
Yeah, they'll be
afterwards.
available, maybe not today, but between tomorrow and Monday, well, over the weekend, they'll be available.
Last thing, would
You there? I'm breaking up.
be better. I wanted to know if we would need to re-register for the next session, or one-time registration is adequate.
One time is fine. If you selected all, well, it's the remaining 2 when you registered yesterday, you said it? If you selected both this month and next month, you should be fine. You selected both?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
So we'll see you next month.
Okay. Sorry about the connectivity. That's why I took off the camera.
That helps, yeah, I know that helps sometimes.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
Good afternoon. There's a question. Miss Smith, Glenn Smith. She said she wanted in the chat. If you have the resources for this workshop today, she wanted if they're available.
Yeah, there are links. When we send out the emails earlier, there were links to our Google Classroom that has some articles. There are a few articles on each of those 5 or 6 qualitative research methodologies, as well as links for textbooks, or at least citations for textbooks. So they're in the, you can send us your email. You can put your email and we'll share that link with you. All right, any other questions? Anything we need to go over? Anything you would like to see in future? Or have us present in future sessions? No?
maybe to use the software like Atlas and Vivo.
I didn't hear the first part. You broke up a little bit.
Put it in the chat.
Okay. So the qualitative data analysis software is as storage unit. You're okay with that? No, nothing on coding your data. You gotta code before you can analyze. Any other questions? Anything else you would like us to go over a little more? Okay, well, if nothing else, then I will take us to our last slide so we can say thank you again. Thank you so much for attending our session today. Follow us at the Eastern Caribbean Center.
And all social.
Here also.
Thank you for attending our second session in the Research Pipeline Training Series. We will see you on the 21st of November for interview protocol development with Doctors Verlene McSween and Nishika Edwards. Bye!